If you've ever seen a manatee floating past you in the water, you might have thought, wow, that's one big cow. But if you really look closely, you'll notice it isn't wearing any shoes. And now that you've ruined the illusion, we can finally talk about what manatees actually are. Manatees aren't cows at all. They're actually more closely related to elephants. That's right. Their closest living relatives are huge land mammals. But since they live in the ocean, we thought it would be fun to get to the bottom of why people call them sea cows. One popular theory is that when European sailors first encountered manatees in the 1500s, they thought they were cows that had swam over from Europe to the Americas. But this is almost certainly not true, because cows were domesticated until thousands of years after humans first sailed to the New World. So these sailors couldn't have been thinking of domestic cows at all. Instead, they probably just saw a large, slow-moving mammal in the water and assumed it was a cow because that's what it looked like. There are a few other theories about why they're called sea cows, but none of them are perfect. One says that manatees were named after a type of sea creature called a manadome, which looks a bit like a jellyfish. But we think this is unlikely, because scientists haven't actually found any evidence that manadomes exist. Another theory claims that manatees got their name from the Spanish word for fat, el manjar, or maybe the Portuguese word marrano, which means pig. These seem like plausible explanations until you realize that manatees do and actually look or behave much like pigs. And while they are quite overweight, we doubt that sailors would have named them after their favorite cut of meat. A much better explanation comes from Native American cultures. The word manatee comes from the Taino, word which simply means sea cow. This makes sense considering that early observers did, in fact, compare manatees to cows. The Taino people had also developed a much closer relationship with manatees than most cultures. Since ancient times, they've hunted manatees for food and used every part of their bodies, from their meat to their fat to their hide. There are even legends about a mythical sea monster called the Iara, who lures unsuspecting fishermen to their deaths by transforming into a beautiful woman and then eating them. Some people believe that the Iara was actually a manatee, which would explain why there are so many stories about deadly water creatures that look like fat, hairless women. So now we know where the name manatee came from. But what about the name sea cow? I actually don't know for sure, but we have a few guesses. Like most animals, manatees have a number of distinctive features that could have inspired their common name. For example, their flippers could have reminded early observers of cow hooves. Or maybe they were just struck by how much time cows and manatees spend underwater. After all, cows like to roll around in the mud, which is basically the same thing as manatees rolling around in the water. But our favorite explanation comes from the old hunters themselves. Maybe when the Taino people saw a manatee swimming past them, they thought it was a cow that had somehow gotten into the water. And when they told their friends about this incredible sight, those friends thought it was pretty funny. So they started calling all manatees sea cows. Because people tend to repeat what they hear, that's the name that stuck. So although manatees aren't cows, we think the Taino people would have appreciated us calling them that. Thanks for watching.